Welcome, everybody. Steven Sensus Fidelium coming at you with not a movie premiere, but it's coming out later tonight, if I got my info correct, on Candace Owens' channel. The premiere of What is a Woman? Here with the brainchild behind it, the mastermind, Timothy J. Gordon, and Father Ripperger, who stars in it for about 30% of the movie, probably.
Yeah, he's sizable. He's the feature. He's the main event in the film. Father Chad.
Well, I think the better description was I was the guy they hung everything on. So
yeah, it's true.
Anyway, welcome and congratulations, Tim. First off, I guess the easy softball question: what in the world made you make a documentary?
Well, I wrote a book called The Case for Patriarchy, and only about 10,000 people bought the book. So I'm like, this is really important, and people like documentaries. And I was put into contact around that time, 2022, with or maybe 21, with a talented documentary maker who had a doc that went 50 million views. Well, many of them were free views. His name is Nicholas Stumphauser, the director, very talented guy. And I was like, we should make this book into a movie. And I pitched it to him with a storyboard when I was at Disney World. He used to live in Florida. And I just said, we can get a bunch of people to watch this if we could get someone big to carry it. And it's, by the way, Steve, it's What a Woman Is, because What is a Woman was the Matt Walsh documentary that never really answers the question. It just says what a woman is not.
Mea culpa. I knew I was going to mess that up. That was going to just one iota is a big deal, right?
Yeah.
Can you change that live, Steve? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I could switch that around. Yeah, that's what happens when you get an idiot who asks to be the host here. So anyway, when I saw the short video you got on your channel, I was thinking, all right, how am I going to go with this? It's going to be so controversial. I watched it. It was not controversial to the point that a lot of haters will probably end up saying because they haven't watched it or anything like that. Why is this subject even controversial in the first place?
Father, you want to take that? I mean, everyone expected my tone to be what my tone is on Twitter, but my tone on Twitter is not my tone on YouTube, and my tone on YouTube is still saltier than the way we made this. You tackle why it's controversial, Father, even put into the nicest terms possible.
Yeah, I mean, I think it ultimately boils down to is the fact that we're actually trying to harpoon a whale that is part of the mainstream or part of the zeitgeist or the mental habits of thinking of our culture, which is basically feminism. I mean, most people are feminists. 90 to 95% of people basically have feminist mindset. And so to actually talk about this topic, I think is what's just going to trigger. Just talking about the topic is going to trigger people. So I don't think it's so much what the content is actually, I think, well laid out, well argued, and well done. But I think that you're just going to have people, the very fact that you're talking about something that's a sacred cow, quote unquote, is what's going to trigger people, I think, ultimately.
Yeah, and I would add this. I mean, Popes Pius 10, 11, 12 all said at the beginning of the century, women do not have the same rights as men. They have to submit to men in everything. They're just quoting the Bible. And a couple of them quoted the catechism, which says one Catholic teaching on the duties of wives catechetically ever appeared in the Catechism of Trent. And it says women need to stay home. They need to love to stay home, a disposition, not just you have to stay there, you have to love it. And you should ask your husband's permission should you ever need to go out. When I said this in a debate at Catholic Answer Studio in El Cajon, California in 2019 to Trent Horn, he laughed at me. Now, I like Trent. I think he's a good guy. I think he's done a lot of good work. But normies, conservative normies and Catholic normies are just not equipped to, at this point, to get hip to what God calls us to do. I mean, particularly on feminism, because it's the original sin. It's the big lie. It's going to be the end of the lie that ends the world, according to Sister Lucy of Fatima. And so normies who think they're conservative or Catholic enough will just laugh at you if you quote First Timothy or First Corinthians or Colossians or First Peter or Ephesians chapter 5, and they'll just start basically lying. I mean, even trads this week came at me on Twitter. Not Joe Heschmeyer. He's not really a trad, but Christian Wagner, Joe Heschmeyer. They all say, well, you're right. Wives do have to obey husbands, but. And then there's always a but where they widen the area where a wife may disobey. And none of them are comfortable with what the church has always taught, which is wives must obey husbands. It just says that without full stop in the Bible. In all things is the scriptural quote. Early interpreters said, well, all things aside from grave sin, grave categorical sin. That's the full stop, though. Everyone else out there is, like Father said, feminist, even a bunch of Catholic influencers, because they're learning now, oh, I'm not that anti-feminist because I think the area where a wife can disobey her husband is more expansive than it actually is. And they get mad at you. So that's what's controversial about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think to kind of put it in kind of biblical terms is that, Adam capitulated in relationship to his wife because the father said he didn't want to be separated from the pleasures of his wife. And what's interesting is now is I think you have a lot of even conservative men. It's comfortable, it's pleasurable to let your wife basically do what she wants or do these other things, etc., or to basically adopt a feminist mentality, which basically gives women free reign in matters that they shouldn't. And so I think that men are just comfortable in the capitulation of their authority and what they should be done, and also maintaining that authority. And then women are comfortable in taking control and taking charge because that's what Eve did. She was the one that ate the fruit and then hands it to Adam. So I think that it plays into the curse of Adam, the curse of Eve, the defects that we see. And because it's comfortable, they don't see a problem with it. I think that's ultimately what a lot of it boils down to.
What about this?
It's about the right answer. That's what it's about. It's about knowing why your beautiful, intelligent wife would ask such a ridiculous question. Today, 20 years later, if I'm leaving my house with golf clubs on my shoulder and golf shoes in my hand, and I'm walking through my living room and my wife goes, "Where are you going?" "Oh, I'm going to put these in the car, honey, then I'm going to come back and mow our lawn. That's where I'm going." Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's completely inverted. It actually have the women keeping track of the men and not the men, the women. But I think it's just, it ultimately
keeps it in her
I think
purse.
it ultimately just boils down to a capitulation and the desire for control, and that they're comfortable in that. Because to fight against those is painful.
Yeah, I was going with that's the Christian conservative comedian, and I mean you hear media all over like Homer Simpson, from TV shows to classics, I guess, like Mary Poppins to Downtown Abbey. You see the feminist agenda in the media all over the place, so it's indoctrinating everyone's minds from wee lads to today.
Yeah, and I would add this, Steve. You saw the screener, right?
Yeah.
So the beginning starts out with "Happy Wife, Happy Life" or "Ask the Boss" segment, which is precisely how my book, Case for Patriarchy, starts out. This is the film version of that book. Ask the boss. People will say this if we're out at a meal. I live in the reddest section of the country, South Mississippi. And people will say, a waiter, a waitress, someone at the next table trying to be funny. They'll say, "Oh, I'm going to ask the boss." And then my wife will go, "Yeah, ask Tim." And they're like, no, it's a joke. I'm saying, or they won't say it's a joke. They're like, "Come on, you're the real boss." My wife will get into arguments with people. Like Steph will literally be like, "What?" For one thing, it's not a funny joke. It was really baby boomers that made this perversity normal, but it's not really a joke because they seem to believe it. And then if they're like, "Well, are you going to go ask your boss?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'll ask him right now. Tim, can I do this?" "Yes, Tim, you can." It's not a joke, and it's not something to be joked about because it subverts the entire structure of the family. And when you think that, because people will do this psychological phenomenon. Well, they'll say it's a joke, but they mean it. You could push the envelope and decipher what they actually mean denotatively by doing tweets like I actually do. Like, so does a wife have to obey a husband in all things aside from mortal sin? And they'll freak out, which they did at me on Twitter this past week. Or Mega, who we featured in the documentary, a really lovely young woman living in Dubai, Canadian woman. She said women should change diapers. It's that simple. What else are they doing with their day? Their husbands are doing, providing for them, making a lovely life, providing for their safety, making it comfortable, making sure they're near a walkable park, to use her expression. Women, what are you doing if you can't change the diaper? And people freak out. So it's not just a joke, Steve and Father.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the reason which I think this movie is actually important, this video is important, is because of the fact that we're finally somebody. In other words, we're addressing the elephant in the room. We've got this gargantuan thing of feminism in our culture, and it needs to be questioned. And I think it needs to be addressed in a coherent, logical fashion. And the church actually provides that. And I think that this is the thing that's important for me, is the fact that it's finally going to be addressed. It might open up, pretty hellacious arguing and that type of thing, and things will blow up. But I think in the end that may be necessary in order for us to actually properly address this topic.
Yeah, I sent a text to Tim during the thing because I was excited where right in an opening, he brings up the 48ers and good old Stanton, Mrs. Stanton, Elizabeth. She has a quote of, "The Bible and the church have been the greatest stumbling blocks in the way of women's emancipation." And I know a lot of quote unquote modern feminists that have no clue that feminism was started in the mid 1800s.
1848. This is the thing that really I hit the most decisively in the book, is there are not waves of feminism, and this is in the movie as well. The Declaration of Sentiments says the feminists' 5 big goals in 1848, written, memorialized from this meeting at Seneca Falls, New York, by the actual witch, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, met with a bunch of other witches. And their 5 big goals are the same 5 goals being chanted in this famous New York City feminist boardroom meeting in 1969 or 1979. So there aren't waves. You were just lied to. They all admit all the evil things they wanted all along. It was just Satan's goal. It's the original sin in the garden, just Eve being the man and the man being the woman. And of course, this is the answer to the question, what is a woman? Well, she's created as man's helpmeet. She's created as the supporting character. She can never be the main character. Woman was created for man, not man for woman. That's scripture if you don't know. And I'll quote Pius X from his meeting with Italian ladies on April 21st, 1909. Women can never be men's equals and cannot therefore enjoy equal rights. When you get into it that way, then you realize, oh, this is the most explosive content on the internet, much more explosive than racism or anti-Semitism or any of that stuff. This is the most explosive content because 95, 96, 98, 99% of people are walking around feminists and they don't even know it.
Yep.
I like how everyone gets all bent out of shape over when someone says we need to repeal the 19th. I'll go a step further. I want to repeal everything from the 14th on, but I'm one that you can only vote if you have property. So that would fall into the 19th in some ways. But I get women's suffrage. That was a big deal and big in tearing away the household too. And now you got the man voting, the woman voting against the man. Now the house is divided. Your vote's pretty much nullified.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and this is actually the other thing is it's just that's actually one of the effects of feminism too. But you actually see this, and this is why actually feminism and communism kind of went hand in hand, because for communism, the basic building block of the society is the individual. That's why they want the women out there doing working and that type of thing. But it is also basically the basic building block, as the church has always said, the basic building block, and the philosophers, of course, have said that the basic building block of the society is the family. So the husband is casting the vote for the family. Once you give women the right to vote, then you end up with that bifurcation that happens. But to kind of get back to the content of this movie, my real hope is that it will actually spark the discussion, because I think that's what's really necessary.
Yeah. And Father, we want the discussion sparked, and we want it done in a way where we're stating these lines that are just Pius X, Pius XI, Pius XII. They're actually more as incendiary, inflammatory as people think I've been on this since 2019. You know, when I announced the writing of this book to Matt Fradd and Trent Horn the next month in late 2019, I make jokes. I sometimes am flippant about it, but me at my most flippant is not as extreme as these short 2 or 3 line quotes from Leo the 13th, Pius the 10th, Pius the 11th, Pius the 12th. And you know what? Leo, Pius, none of those 4 popes who are more incendiary than me are as incendiary as St. Paul in 8 or 9 passages in Holy Writ. So you have to get to the fundamental question, what a woman is. The movie comes out tomorrow at 10 CST on CandaceOwens.com. You have to get to the fundamental question. Can you be a Christian and a feminist? Can you be a Christian and an Arianist? No. Can you be a Christian and a Monophysite? No. Can you be a Christian and a Jew? No. Can you be a Christian and a feminist? No, because the Bible is the most extreme. The patristic fathers are really extreme. The popes, even in the 20th century, are really extreme. People have called me extreme on this, and that's just because I make jokes, but I'm still not as daring most often as St. Paul or any of the commentators down through the 20 centuries.
Well, you know, it's kind of interesting that you mentioned that, Tim. I think a lot of it has to do with perspective, too. We think it's extreme today when, you know, versus the whole history of humanity, because it's part of the natural law and part of the divine possible, accepted that. They just lived it. They knew it was true. It was part of that. You even kind of see it even in Walsh's movie, in the sense that they go to Africa and they're asking these guys, what about X, Y, and Z? And they're just laughing at you because everybody knew it. It was the same thing, and everybody recognized it up until the late 1800s, when philosophically things were collapsing and the societies was collapsing. There's a whole series of historical reasons why, but in point in fact, it's not until that we go off the rails, and then, you know, 100, 150 years or 200 years later, everybody is so imbued with the feminist mind that when they hear something that is in fact just part of the natural law, that's just normal, it's just natural, right? They think it's extreme, when in point in fact, no, it's extreme actually is the feminism, ironically.
And if anybody's wondering, it's not just men talking in this documentary. You have 3 or 4 women that explain that, how they went from that mindset to, wait, I don't need to be going to law school. I should be doing this. And I think that was a great addition to the program too.
Yeah, so Mega was our representative who just appeared on my show. I just did a show right before this with Father and 4 other stars of the film. They just dropped in kind of serially, one for 10 minutes at a time. Mega, along with Steph, was we have a segment where it just goes through really bright, beautiful, whatever, you know, idiots would say powerful. None of them are powerful, but they're bright and beautiful Catholic women that appear serially. Steph, Mega, we had a couple others, you know, GAB, we have Jocelyn, and they all go through and say, here's where I was primed to go. Doctor, lawyer, we have Lauren, doctor, lawyer, veterinarian, and Chinese-speaking businesswoman, educated at Ivy League. And they're like, I just learned it's a joke. It's like one of our, we have a couple of Gabriellas in the film. One of them says, so I was talking to my parents, because she like graduated high school early and started law school at like 19. She's really smart. And she's like, I was talking to my parents about all the hard work involved by the 1L year of law school. You know, that's what we law students call the first year. And she's like, this is really hard. So what do I do after I get the law degree? They're like, well, then you just work for 40 years. She's like, so I have to work hard now so that I can work hard later for 40 years? That sucks. You know, it's like, that's not, these are just the truly smart women are the ones that are like, why do I want both curses? The curse of labor, child labor, and the curse of man's physical labor. That's terrible. These people who buy this are retarded. These women who buy it are retarded. And it's basically that simple. That's not your curse. You guys don't have to toil. You get to get your beauty rest, is the fair sex, sleep in more, even if you stay home with 8 kids, we put our kids to bed later at night than almost everyone we know, so they don't get up early, so Steph can sleep in till 9 or 9:30. You can do whatever you like. You don't need to go to work.
Yeah, the people go from being enslaved at the house to being enslaved by a boss and sitting in your car for a couple hours each way, going back and forth, drop the kid at daycare, let somebody else raise the kid from an infant to how old, and then let the state educate your kid, and they wonder, how come my kid hates me when they're 15, 16?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that, Tim. That was actually, I've mentioned that actually too, not publicly or anything, but I've mentioned it to people in the discussion of the whole feminist thing is, why do women want both curses? I mean, the curse of Adam and the curse of Eve, why do you want both curses? That makes no sense to me. It would seem to me that you would actually just want to, engage in the thing that is going to actually make you the most happy. I think the other thing is too, and this is, which I know Tim's read these things too as well, is that, a lot of these, and this was something which the feminists, you didn't see much coverage of this, but that's one of the reasons why I want this movie to get out there, so that it did people see that women who had the potential to be very high level, or that actually had reached certain level high levels, but they were interviewing women that become CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. A lot of them quit, and they asked them, well, why do you want to do this? They're like, I don't want to do this. I want to be home with my kids. Why would you want to work when you could actually be home with your kids and fulfill that natural inclination that you have as a woman to nurture and take care of your kid? So I totally agree. I think it's just mind-boggling, I should say, that women actually want both curses. But a lot of that tells you too, they were sold a bill of goods. You will not be happy. You will not find fulfillment unless you have a career, which was just a bill of goods.
Yeah, a bill of lies. I mean, social lies, socially constructed lies that come from the elitist top down are weirdly compelling, given the mimetic desire of man. But this one seems so obvious. Like, so don't you want to be like the men? Your man is out there being liberated by shoveling poo or whatever. He earns a living by shoveling poo. He has to get up at 5 a.m. and shovel poo, so that you can stay home and sleep in, and just all you have to do is educate the kids and kind of give them a few meals, and you could just read them books in the warmth by day, and you can sleep. I don't know how anyone ever got sold on that. And when you see the compelling chapter of the documentary with our 6 smart ladies who are on track to doing the sought after jobs, I think it's just going to expose the lie. It's going to give the lie to how see-through it is to want an extra curse, particularly Adam's curse, which is worse than Eve's.
Yes, that's right. Exactly.
And all I think of is being the token Southerner here now. Tim's an immigrant to the glorious Dixie idea. Is that you look at the history before all the feminists come in. The Southerner way was, you worship the woman, in the sense they said they respected them so much that it looked like worship. The men were out there doing this, and the other. And you look at all the movies from back then, elegant. They're at the house. They got the kids there. You didn't see the woman out there picking the cotton or on top of the doing the manual labor. It was the guys out there doing that. And see the different sense between post-war and after-war, antebellum and post-bellum.
Right.
Not to bring up the war part about it, but the culture was destroyed at that time to immigrate this Northeastern idea of everyone's got to go to work. You got to get in the fields. World War I, World War II. You got to get in the making the bombs and all this, and everyone stayed in the workplace after that.
Well, when you want to subvert and destroy a culture, you subvert and destroy the single cell of society. And there's one effective way to subvert the family, and it's to turn men and women against each other. And the way you turn men and women against each other is by making women who are inferior in rank and inferior in rights same in dignity. All dignity means is we can both go to heaven. So can a baby with his father. That doesn't mean they're equal in rank. Make the women seek to supplant their superiors in the household, their husbands. And of course, the husband's going to resent the wife. And if the wife has grown or had brainwashed into her the expectation that she should seek to subvert his superiority in rank, then she'll resent him and he'll resent her. There's nothing else that would have worked. And that's why it's so simple, yet undoing it seems to be so complex.
Yeah, I think part of the other thing is too, is one of the upshots of feminism that we don't really talk too much about either, is that it was given to Adam to actually work and to provide for the family. So as soon as the wife goes out and starts providing for herself and also providing for the family, there's a kind of an effeminizing effect it has on the man. It has a kind of takes a chink out of his armor, so to speak. But I think that the upshot of all this is it really is an attack. You know, as Tim was talking about in the beginning, is Satan goes after Eve to undo Adam, and now you have, and so we're just doing a replay of that, you know, towards the end, because the way that he's going to destroy Satan's going to destroy the family is by subverting the proper order within the context of the families. It's an attack on the family.
Yeah, and this is scripture itself, Father. The scripture itself says the woman fell, not the man. John Chrysostom writes about this, and he's like, well, look what happened. The woman was tricked by a beast. The man was tricked by his wife and a fellow human being. Men would not have been capable of being tricked by a beast. Only a woman would. And that's another one of these, I guess, Christian platitudes. It's so basic that we could even call it a platitude that is not uttered anymore, that again, it might state it in sterile terms, but that's far more incendiary than any joke I've ever told on Twitter.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that's going to happen is people are going to accuse us of being incendiary just by revealing, you know, this is what the tradition is, this is what scripture says, this is what the Pope said, this is what, just saying it is going to be considered incendiary.
Yes. Well, I mean,
just to wrap it up, what's some good solutions? I mean, because you got the pendulum goes one side. Sometimes the reactions go like the one dude that's online that's always says like he's got to sleep around with 48,000 people, and he's sitting there playing on his walkie-talkie, and everyone's like bringing out the banana leaves for him and feeding him strawberries type deal. You don't want to go to the point that you think you're a tyrant in the place. You don't want to be steps to either. So what are some solutions that people can do like right now that either if they're in that mindset to help get out of it, or gradually work to get out of it, or just anything to get that first step going?
The first step within the family for men to take the power back, you mean,
right?
Steve?
It's just a mindset in general.
Well, you have to start with scripture, which is why, I don't know. I'm always going to recommend my book and Steph's book, which the film's really based on our two books, Ask Your Husband and The Case for Patriarchy, because in both those books, it's really the second and the third chapters where we recount the history of feminism. It's just a bunch of witches that hated Christianity. Oh, and by the way, Elizabeth Cady Stanton also rewrote the Bible. She said the Christian Bible, no feminist can accept, which Christian feminists today are less honest about. So she wrote something called the Woman's Bible. So we recount the history, and then in each of our books, we have a chapter that's just pure scripture, pure patristic interpreters, which is tradition, pure magisterial popes teaching about those scriptures. And it's just inarguable. If you are a Christian, not even a Catholic, even just a Bible-believing Protestant, and we have Orthodox representatives in the film, then you just can't be a feminist. And what is a feminist? Anyone that believes that men and women are of equal rank. So yeah, of course, a man, like Father Ripperger says in the film, a man's just going to want to naturally love his wife if she's just naturally submissive to him. But there's not much to love if she's challenging him. You can't be tender when someone's coming at you with a knife, if your private in the army is trying to come at the general with a knife and say, I'm the general. Even if he's the most loving general in the world, you're never going to see it. He's going to seem mean because he's having to buck him down, throw him in the brig. That's the situation at first. But when all these brainwashed Christian women, and I'd say Catholic women are more brainwashed feminists than even Protestant or Orthodox, all these brainwashed Christian Catholic women, once they see how clear the teaching really is and that they've been lied to over the last 150 years, that to get to heaven, they have to obey their husbands. Jesus will never issue them a direct order. Jesus issues the orders to their husbands to give them. Then they're going to see, part of being a good woman. The biggest part of being a good woman, if you're a lay woman, is obeying your husband. Then I think things start to turn around.
Father, you got any tips?
Well, yeah, usually what I do is I've actually done retreats, like 5-day retreats, talking about all of this. And I always start out with, here's the problem from original sin. These are the problems that now that men and women now actually have. And this is how scripture provides the solution, which is, Tim's talking about certain passages in scripture. And then I'll just unpack those passages in scripture so that I think that if people actually understand the nature of the problem, that what men and women got stuck with, and then, which in the context of that, they're going to find out, well, then feminism is just, the curse of Eve on steroids. So once they find that out, then you can say, okay, and then here the God already provides the remedy in scripture. So this is what you need to do. And so that's usually what I just tell people, look, just go read scripture and just read what the saints said on it, on these particular passages, and just try and live it. That's the beginning. And, as an exorcist, one of the things that we actually do is that from time to time, we'll get families where the demons are attacking the family. And we just tell people, you just have to start living this right order. The husband has to be the head of the household and the wife has to submit, and the husband has to love the wife. If you guys just do that, this will clear up a lot of the problems. And we found that it cleared out 80% of the diabolic attacks on the family. So we just tell people, look, that's what you have to do. This is the right order that God has established. And that's why you need to follow it, is because it's the order that God established, and the demons are going to work contrary to that order.
I would just say this as a parting shot, Steve. Filmmakers look regularly for the most common overlap, Johnny six-pack overlapping content for a film to make. What's a film that everyone wants or needs to watch, right? And they have to reinvent the wheel often, usually just reinventing better movies from the 80s and 90s to come up with something that most or all people will be interested in. Everyone who wants to be married or is married has this movie as the most important thing on their to-do list in ever. I was going to say in late 2025 or 26 or in the 2020s, because it's the only fully true commentary available at pop culture besides Steph's book, Ask Your Husband, or my book, The Case for Patriarchy, but people don't read anymore. It's the only fully true commentary out there on what a Christian wife must be, what a Christian woman must be, qua her Christian husband and the Christian man of her life. So it's literally of it's like a pearl of great price to everyone. It's the only commentary out there. I've never seen any other fully true commentary. And that's why Protestants like Chase on Twitter, Sovereign Bra, or Joel Webbin are so behind this project. That's why Orthodox like Rachel Wilson and Andrew Wilson and Jay Dyer are in on it. That's why it's the full expression of Scripture and the Catholic tradition. And there's no other product like this out there. And there's no other movie you've ever seen that you pretty much need to see for your happiness and salvation. It's a big claim, and I'm making it, and it debuts tomorrow at 10 a.m. CST on CandaceOwens.com. It's called What a Woman Is.
Well, we'll see if people agree with you, Tim, after they watch it.
No, Coach, I was going to ask you to go ahead and pitch that again, but you already did it. No, it was a fantastic flick, film, document, whatever you want to call it. Fantastic show. The whole thing, I was doing a lot of work behind there, but I was glued to it the entire time. It was, I guess you need to change the motto. Watch for your happiness.
Yeah. For your salvation, for your happiness before you die as well. So you don't have to keep living in this hellish dreamscape of tyrannical matriarchy.
Yeah, and I think that's the if you don't follow the natural law, you're going to be miserable, and so people are miserable. And if you don't follow what is in Scripture and in these things which we just bring out in the book, in the movie, if you don't follow those things, you're going to be miserable. I mean, the fact is that this is just so. In a certain sense, it's if you want to avoid being miserable, then maybe you should watch this movie.
Okay, great pitches. Anyways, Father, thank you. Tim, congratulations again. Thank you for doing this. Father, can we get a parting blessing before we run?
Sure.
Thanks.
Benedictio Deum omnipotentis, Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti, super vos et manet semper.